I've been playing a lot of Marvel Rivals recently. This isn't me playing though. If I tried to run OBS and Marvel Rivals at the same time, my laptop would explode. But there's one thing that's been bugging me a lot about the discourse surrounding Marvel Rivals, and that's the comparisons to Overwatch. It seems like there are two base opinions about Marvel Rivals when comparing it to Overwatch. Opinion number one is negative. Marvel Rivals is literally just Overwatch. It's just the same game again. This is so uncreative. Why would you play this instead of Overwatch? And then there's opinion number two, which is positive. Wow, Marvel Rivals is just like Overwatch. But before they ruined the game. Why would you ever play Overwatch again after this game? Now don't get me wrong, these games are incredibly similar. They are both hero shooters, they both have an emphasis on abilities, they both have an emphasis on ultimates, they both have 3 class roles consisting of tank, damage dealer, and healer. And no, I don't really care if Marvel Rivals calls them Vanguards, Goobers, and Spagoiladroids, they are the same. And they're both 6v6. Well, Overwatch used to be 6v6.
No.
6v6 gameplay.
Where?
But despite all this, I do think that Marvel Rivals does innovate quite a bit. And even beyond that, I just think the games in general feel different to play. And game feel is really important. Both Halo and Call of Duty share just about every game mechanic in existence, but they feel different to play. It's very easy to get carried away looking at video games as if they're just a numbered list of features. I mean, it can be pretty hard to distinguish between all the Souls-like games without just being like, this one has a special parry mechanic and that one has a special parry mechanic, and, well, you know, they all just kind of feel different, and that's the main difference. So to combat the approach of looking at a game as if it's just a numbered list, I will be providing a numbered list of important differences that I think differentiate Marvel Rivals from Overwatch. The kit size of Marvel Rivals characters, I think, is the biggest and best innovation around the design space of hero shooters. And like all the best innovations ever, it's actually really simple. No, seriously, do you guys remember before Bunch of Balloons? You had to spend like an hour filling water balloons for like 5 minutes of throwing them. The younger generations will never know this struggle. Okay, so to explain what I mean by difference in kit size, let's compare Overwatch to Marvel Rivals. Okay, how many abilities does an Overwatch character have? They have 2 and an ultimate. Sometimes they'll have an alternative fire, but that's not a guarantee. Most of them don't. Now, how many abilities does a Marvel Rivals character have?
I don't know.
You see, Marvel Rivals has a fluid number of abilities per character. Jeff the Landshark only has 2 abilities. Captain America, including his shield, has 5 abilities. And yet, Jeff doesn't feel underdeveloped and Captain America doesn't feel like he has too many abilities. If anything, it almost feels like it's the opposite. Marvel Rivals has the philosophy that when the kit's done, the kit's done. And I think that's a much better method than just jamming every hero with the same number of abilities. Because with a set number of abilities, you get a lot of situations where a character really feels like they just need something more. Or you'll get a character with a complete kit with an ability just kind of lazily tacked on. I'm looking at you, Junkrat Trap, and Venom Mine, and Spikeweed, and Potato Mine. You know what? I feel like we just need to realize as a collective that every stationary mine-based ability is terrible. Marvel Rivals' approach to abilities feels almost like a fighting game. Characters are given tools to their kit until they feel complete. Some characters have a lot of abilities, some characters don't. Some characters have multiple primary weapons, some characters don't. And some characters will even have double jumps on cooldowns. The focus is on making a character until they feel like they're made complete, rather than hitting an arbitrary number of abilities you decided to add at the beginning. And I have a hunch that this is going to become the standard for hero shooters in the future. This is a big one that I'm actually really surprised not more people have talked about. But it's actually kind of insane how much more mobile Marvel Rivals characters are than Overwatch's. I mean, Winston is one of the most mobile characters in Overwatch, and he gets absolutely clowned on by the Hulk in terms of mobility. I mean, Genji is considered to have really good mobility in Overwatch, but if he was in Marvel Rivals, he would probably be mediocre. If you compare every Marvel Rivals character with the Overwatch character considered to be their counterpart, the Marvel Rivals character is basically always more mobile. Pharah has a limited amount of time that she can spend in the air. Iron Man can be in the air the entire time, and he can also be in the air faster. But honestly, more than the characters just being mobile, I think the game has better mobility because the maps allow the characters to be more mobile. Seriously, do what you're trained not to in a YouTube video and actually look at the background footage for a moment. This map has large open spaces with rooms that have different levels of elevation, action happening on multiple floors at once. One thing that's always frustrated me about Overwatch is that these characters have really cool movement abilities. They can jump large distances, they can dash, they can climb walls, all for the entire game to take place in a hallway with 2 cardboard boxes. I don't think I've ever seen a single character in any video game move as fast as Spider-Man does in Marvel Rivals. And that's not due just to great mobility tools, it's also due to great mobility-centric map design. Spider-Man, in an entirely enclosed environment, doesn't move that fast. It's the maps that allow him to move fast. And because Marvel Rivals not only gives their characters more mobility, but also focuses on maintaining mobility in the map design, I think it does mobility better than Overwatch does. This is going to be an incredibly controversial take, but Overwatch and most ability-based hero shooters would be better if they were in third person.
You need to leave!
Look, okay, I'll admit, first person is better for aiming, but in my opinion, it's only like 10% better. And this 10%, while important, doesn't make up for the fact that first person is like 100% worse at a lot of things. And Overwatch knows third person is better in a lot of cases. That's why they awkwardly shift you into third person every time you use Reinhardt's shield. Because they know you can't actually tell whether or not your shield is protecting anyone if it's in first person. Doctor Strange can alternate between using his shield and his primary fire in a way that Reinhardt simply never could by virtue of the fact that he can still aim while he has his shield out. You never have to readjust. Another thing that's way better in third person than first person is wall running. A lot of characters in Marvel Rivals have wall running, and some characters in Overwatch have wall running. Wall running in Overwatch feels terrible because you get a face full of brick wall every time you do it. Flying feels better in third person, dashing feels better in third person, Just about every advanced ability move feels better in third person. The 10% of aiming you gain in first person just simply isn't worth it. It's not worth losing the awareness of your surroundings you gain by going for third person. Look, Counter-Strike is better because it's in first person. But a game like Marvel Rivals that has a heavy focus on advanced movement and a large amount of melee characters is better in third person. In Marvel Rivals, the general balance between the class roles, that being damage, healer, and tank, are much different than they are in Overwatch. The biggest reason for this difference is the fact that healers heal a lot more health per second, and this is a big buff to the DPS. Alright, I'll back up just a little bit so I can explain myself. Essentially, it's well known at this point that the metagame of Overwatch broke substantially after GOATs. To simplify the story, pro players realized that tanks were kinda just better than DPS. This was an unintended consequence of adding characters who could essentially heal their entire team at once. The thing holding tanks back from dominating the metagame over DPS was the fact that they were a massive heal vacuum. The main benefit of DPS was essentially just that they were low maintenance in comparison to tanks. This mainly stemmed from the fact that the health advantage that tanks have were simply just greater than the damage advantage DPS had. The way I describe it is that tanks had more than double the health and more than half the damage. This is a oversimplified reading, but it's generally true. And also, it's true in Marvel Rivals. And there's a ton of healers in this game that can both input insane healing per second, making tanks not this huge heal sink, and who can also heal multiple targets at once. So why hasn't GOATs taken over? And yes, I know that at the highest level there are some teams who do run 3 tanks and 3 healers. However, this is not a dominant strategy. It seems way more people are finding success with the standard 2-2-2 ratio than the GOATs ratio. Well, it goes back to the higher healing per second. Because even though tanks still have more than double the health and more than half the damage, the actual healing the healers put out offsets this a ton. Here's how I describe this effect. So let's say we're comparing Moon Knight to Doctor Strange. Let's say Moon Knight has a DPS of 150, Doctor Strange has a DPS of 100. Uh-oh, Doctor Strange has more than double the health and more than half the damage of Moon Knight. Oh, this must be super imbalanced. But no. Because the healers are healing the person you're targeting at about 80 health per second, which means the modified damage you're doing per second isn't 150 and 100, it's 70 and 20. So even though Moon Knight started out only doing 50% more damage, after factoring in healing, he's now doing more than 3 times damage. Obviously, I need to reiterate, these are not the actual damage and healing numbers from the game. I'm just using simple to understand numbers to convey information better. But trust me, this effect is very noticeable in-game, especially for certain tanks like Captain America. If you're punching someone and they're being healed, it feels like you're having a pillow fight with them. But what Marvel Rivals either intentionally or unintentionally created is a sort of rock, paper, scissors mechanic. Vanguards will beat duelists by virtue of their higher stat pool. Duelists will beat supports by virtue of the fact they can break through the wall of healing. And supports will beat vanguards because vanguards cannot break through the wall of healing. Now let me clarify before some idiot thinks it's a good idea to run directly at a tank as a support. I am referring to team composition, not individual matchups between heroes. I am referring to stacking classes. Stacked duelists will beat stacked healers will beat stacked vanguards. What I like about the rock, paper, scissors effect is that it guarantees that the most consistent way to win the most often is to have the standard 2-2-2. This, I think, is the biggest difference in terms of game feel, and it's the reason why I personally prefer Marvel Rivals over Overwatch. Have you guys ever noticed that just about every single time an Overwatch player says a Marvel Rivals character is a ripoff of an Overwatch character, they have to include like 3 different characters? This is not a joke. I have legitimately heard people say that Punisher is a ripoff of Soldier 76, Reaper, and Bastion. Like, guys, at one point will you just accept that a character is original? Because right now you're just claiming you invented the shotgun. Marvel Rivals characters generally have a lot more complexity and depth. They on average just have a lot more going on in them. Like, I still can't get over the fact that you can just play as Spider-Man in this game. Of course you can play as Spider-Man. It's a Marvel game, genius. That's not what I mean. Of course you can play as the character Spider-Man. But the fact that Spider-Man feels like Spider-Man from the comics, or movies, or cartoons, or even the standalone video games. He doesn't feel like a lazy hero shooter version of Spider-Man, where they replace his webline with Roadhog's hook and call it a day. No, he feels like you're playing as Spider-Man. And to me, that really is Marvel Rivals' ace in the hole. Not Spider-Man specifically, of course, but how many characters offer a unique experience that you just can't get anywhere else. If you like a character like Cassidy in Overwatch, then you can probably play other things that feel similar. You could just use a revolver in a different game. Yeah, of course it doesn't feel all the way like him, but you're halfway there. But if you really like the playstyle of Black Panther, what other game can you play? What other character is like this? I can't think of one. While I don't agree with people who think that Marvel Rivals is going to kill Overwatch, I definitely don't think Marvel Rivals is going to fall off quickly from popularity either. And it goes back to character complexity. People have already fallen in love with characters like Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Loki, and no other game is offering an alternative. And I think it's because of the determination Marvel Rivals has to defining a character by their uniqueness. Loki is a character all about clones, and everything in his kit revolves solely around clones. Think about every single ability Loki has. He can spawn a clone, he can swap places with a clone, he can turn invisible and leave a clone in his place, he can spawn a healing aura around a clone. Literally every single thing he does revolves around the clones. Winter Soldier revolves entirely around the fact his abilities reset his ammo and give him armor. He's a true combo character. Every single one of Black Panther's abilities allow him to get a dash reset. There is literally not a single ability he has that doesn't do that. Overwatch used to try and have characters this unique and creative, but they kinda gave up a long time ago. They've given up character complexity and uniqueness for perceived balance. I think Donkey probably explains this the best in his video on Overwatch 2.
What's tricky about making a game like this work is balancing all the different heroes. In a perfect game, every character would feel powerful. In this game, Blizzard balances heroes by making them feel weaker or more generic. When the game first came out, Roadhog's hook was insane. That was insane. If you grab somebody, dead. Today, if you grab somebody with Roadhog's hook, you die. You fucking dumbass. In Overwatch 1, Mei could freeze people. That was her whole gimmick, remember? Now she just slows them down. In the old Overwatch, Junkrat's stupid-ass tire gets a saxophone kill. Look at the tire in Overwatch 2. What is that? Doomfist used to be crazy. If you punched a healer in Overwatch 1, they were removed from the match. In Overwatch 2, I can't even kill a fucking D-Mech Diva.
Time and time again, they sacrificed characters' uniqueness for the sake of balance. This is kind of a tricky area to talk about, because generally speaking, I feel like people don't actually know what they want when it comes to game balance. We claim we want perfect balance over anything else, but the truth is, in general, people care way more about maintaining playstyle variety than they do balance. There's a reason why we don't play competitive aim trainer. A game where everyone has the same mobility, same health, and same gun would be boring and no one would buy it. Marvel Rivals offers more unique gameplay loops than Overwatch does. Hell, they offer more unique gameplay loops than Overwatch has ever. I don't think Overwatch characters ever truly were as unique as some of the Marvel Rivals characters are. And that's why I think character complexity is so important for the identity of Marvel Rivals. You can only play a simple character for so long until you get bored. But a character that has infinite depth, infinite things you can do, you can keep playing that forever. Everyone saying that Marvel Rivals is a ripoff of Overwatch really kind of annoy me, and I'll explain why. Back in the day, way back, there weren't first-person shooters. There were Doom clones. Then, there became enough Doom clones that they became first-person shooters. King of Fighters was an obvious ripoff of Street Fighter, until it wasn't, and they both just became fighting games. League of Legends was an obvious ripoff of Dota, until it wasn't, and they both just became MOBAs. This repeated pattern is clear and obvious. The Overwatch style hero shooter is just a new enough genre that we don't yet perceive it as its own individual genre. We just see it as a subcategory of shooters. It's taking similar ideas and utilizing them in different ways. That's what the entire history of game development has been. Not everything has to be completely innovative. Not everything has to throw a million new ideas at a wall. Sometimes iterating is good enough. Sometimes you just want to iterate on an existing idea to remove what doesn't work and enhance what does. And that's what, in my opinion, Marvel Rivals is. It's a refined version of Overwatch.